we're recording this meeting. What we want to do is record the conversation, the meeting notes. This is a specific set of folks on this call today, but we want to make sure others can see what we talked about to continue this conversation. We're just getting started with this project, so we want to make sure this is out there for others to see as needed. So we're recording this just so everyone's familiar with that. Casey Howard and Alex Dupy, also with MIG, they'll introduce themselves in a second here. They're going to be recording notes. So we can pretend like we were out in rhododendron right now, walking along with notepads. They're doing the same thing right now, writing notes. So as you have questions, comments, they'll be writing those down with notes. We'll be getting meeting minutes. When this meeting's over, we'll make sure we get those meeting minutes out to you so we have an accurate record. We make sure what was said was correct and we have any changes that are needed. Any questions on Zoom, how this is going to work today before I jump into introductions and then an agenda overview?
John, just a quick one. There was a quick question on the chat about how you can see everybody. So Jerry, thanks for responding. Just up on the top right, it'll say speaker view or gallery view. If you click on gallery view, everybody should be able to come up on screen at the same time. But that usually helps. Your choice though, on what you want to see.
Steve, you've got it.
In doing previous Zooms, if people are not on a desktop computer or a laptop computer and they're using their phone, the gallery view is not available on phone Zoom application. It's only available on the desktop application.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Good point. And this isn't a terribly large group. So again, if any questions, you are having trouble seeing or hearing anyone, just please raise your hand. We'll make sure we adjust that. So why don't we move into introductions? I'm looking at my screen, so I'm going to go around and call on you. And all I want to get across from you all is just your name, who you are, why you're on this call today, and why this project is so important to you for being on this call. So why don't we start what I've got on my screen, top left. John Young, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Well, John Young, I'm with the Rhody Rising Committee and a full-time resident of the rhododendron area.
Great, thanks, John. How about, let's go down to Jerry. Do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Jerry Johnson with Johnson Economics. We're on the consulting team. We do market analysis and financial analysis.
Great. And down to Casey.
Hey, I'm Casey Howard. I'm with MIG. I'm a landscape designer and graphic designer, and I'm helping with the projects.
Wow, thanks, Casey. Mike. Oh, Mike, if you can unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself, Mike.
There we go.
Or I can unmute him. There we go. Should be able to.
There we go. Oh, it just.
Okay. All right. What's a computer? Mike Miskowitz. I'm a full-time resident in Rhody. I'm also on the Rhody CPO. I'm vice chair with Steve Graper, and I'm his neighbor up here. And it's important to have, safety and for everyone up here. And beautiful.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Let's see, Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina with Clackamas County. I am on this call because part of my job description is to coordinate services for the Mount Hood Express, and Rhody is a stop along the Mount Hood Express fixed route and is well used in the summer and in the winter.
All right, great. Thanks, Christina. Let's go to Abby with ODOT.
Hi, Avi Tara, Development Review Lead Engineering. I am here to support traffic-related and engineering concern from ODOT standpoint.
All right. And then we have one caller with a 971 area code.
I think that might be obvious.
That is mine as well. I'm not sure why I
Oh,
have
okay.
two.
All right. You've got 2 boxes. So there you go.
I'm sorry.
Nope, we're good.
Let's
We're
keep
good.
going. Thanks, Avi. Leslie. Oh, Leslie, let's see. Let's see if I can unmute you. You're on mute.
Unmute yourself.
Yep.
There you
There we go.
Hi, I'm Leslie. I'm a part-time Rhody resident and part of Rhody Rising, although a little more virtual these days, and I care what's going on in Rhody.
Great. Thanks, Leslie. Karen. Oh, it's on mute, Karen.
Hi,
There we go.
I am Karen Burdick. I'm the Long Range Planning Manager at Clackamas County. And so this project is important to me. It's a part of the Long Range Planning Work Program at Clackamas County. I am hoping that it will help us really understand how we can implement the plans that we have for pedestrian and bicycle facilities in rhododendron and what that will really look like along Highway 26.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex Dupuy with MIG. I'm the Director of Planning based in Portland and also helping John and Casey with this project. Thanks for spending the time with us this afternoon.
All right. And let's see, up to Brett.
Hi, I'm Brett Setterfield. I work alongside Scott on the Clackamas County Pedestrian Bikeway Advisory Committee. I am a planner at Clackamas County and I do a lot of the GIS work along with Scott and Karen.
All right. Thanks, Brett. How about Stacy?
I'm here. Sorry about that. Lost my mouse for a second. Hi, I'm Stacy Goldstein, and I'm with the Department of Land Conservation and Development, the TGM program. And we're sponsoring this project. Looking forward to working with you folks on moving forward some of the Rhody Rising, the important work that you've done to date. And I'm really happy to see everybody here. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Stacy. How about Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm a lifelong full-time resident of rhododendron and just everything Rhody. I'm in the CPO and the Rhody Rising, everything.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Let's see, Caitlin?
There you go. Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin. I work for Jerry as an analyst.
Great. All right, Caitlin. Let's see, Kate.
Hi, I'm Kate Hawkins. I'm a planner with the Oregon Department of Transportation, and I'm on this call because I am the assigned planner for Clackamas County and on our development review team.
All right. Good to have you, Kate. Let's see, Seth.
Hi, I'm Seth Brumley. I'm a senior planner at ODOT, and I was involved with scoping this project. But at this point, I think Kate's going to be our primary contact, and I'll just be here for support.
Great. Thanks, Seth. Steve.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Graper. I'm the chair of the Rhododendron Community Planning Organization and basically the chair of the Rhody Rising subcommittee of the CPO. And kind of started this ball rolling back in 2016. Well, actually way back in 2012 when I was working with Rich Watanabe and trying to get speeds reduced in rhododendron. And one thing led to another, and here we find ourselves in trying to beautify and do something with rhododendron to make biking and ped safety more of a priority for Highway 26 as it goes through rhododendron.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And then let's see, last but not least, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, John. Scott Holscher, transportation planner for Clackamas County. I was involved with scoping this project. You've probably seen several emails from me on this effort, so nice to see everybody's faces this afternoon. Thanks for joining us. So I work on a variety of transportation projects for the county, throughout the county, urban and rural projects, kind of with a focus on bicycle and pedestrian projects. So this is, for me, one of the main projects that I'm working on now. So I'm excited to get it rolling.
All right. Okay, did I miss anybody on the round robin of introductions? Well, thank you again for being here. This is a great group, so thanks for spending the time today. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be doing a virtual site tour, and the first email I believe that Scott sent out, what we actually planned on doing before the whole world changed in front of us, was to do a full day of walking tour, getting to know the site, followed by a meeting to talk about some of the opportunities and challenges that we're going to be looking at for this project. And so obviously things have changed quite a bit over the last month, a few weeks. And so what we're going to do today is kind of a hybrid of that site tour and that workshop, where we're going to go down, we're going to look at what's going on, spend some time talking about stops along the way. Scott's put together a really good itinerary, actually not very different than it would be if we were actually walking or driving the site in person. So we'll show you that in a second. And the main thing is we want to give all of us plenty of time for discussion to talk about what we're seeing. We've got folks from all sorts of different agencies, residents, people that really know this area really well. And so this is a chance to talk freely about some of the ideas, concerns, questions that are out there. So again, this is really a chance to get these across. We're just getting started as far as a project. Rhody Rising, as Steve and Mike and others can talk about, has been going on for some time. But as a formal project to look at these sites, which I'll talk about in a second, we're just getting started with this planning process. So you haven't missed anything. We're just getting going. This is a good time to bring up ideas if you have them, or questions, of course, if you do.
John, just
yes.
a quick question. The 503 phone number, is that associated with somebody already on screen, or is that somebody else?
422-5.
That's you, Michelle?
Somebody just joined.
Okay.
I have a
It's me,
feeling.
it's Melanie.
Melanie.
It's
Melanie's
yeah,
trying to
it's
get
me.
in. Melanie,
Yeah.
can you get your video going?
I'm trying to. I'm not sure which one to tap on.
Lower left-hand corner.
It should be, there should be a video one there. It says mute and then video.
I don't know that it's video. It's just the same. But you guys go ahead, because I do have questions about this, and you may have addressed them earlier.
Okay.
I didn't realize that this was all based on housing.
Melanie, do you want to, but we're just getting started, so you're not too late. Do you want to just do a quick introduction of who you are, please?
Oh, sure. Is this Scott?
Oh, I'm sorry. This
speaking?
is John Phoenix. This is John Phoenix. I'm the project manager with the project, but you're not too late.
Okay, John.
Introductions.
Okay. I apologize. I'm Melanie Farnsworth. I live in Rhododendron, and I'm a member of Rhody Rising.
Great.
Excellent. Thanks, Melanie.
Thank you.
We see your name on the screen, so that's great. So we have a logo of a phone with a name, so that's good to see.
I'm going to try to get in on the video.
Okay.
And Melanie, you might have missed it. I did mention we're recording this, so
yes,
if you missed it, if something happened you didn't get to see, if you want to share it, we're going to record all of this, so we'll have a chance to rebroadcast this as needed. So let's get going here. I don't want to spend too much time. I want to have folks that are out there that really know the site to talk about what we're looking at, what we're seeing, some of the opportunities and challenges. But I do want to give a little bit of background and understanding of what this project is, why we're all here, why we're starting this, and why it's so important. So with that being said, Scott, I'd like to put you on the spot, if you don't mind. And just really quickly, kind of an overview of where this came from, why we're here. Stacy, feel free to jump in as well. But just kind of a quick overview of this project before we get going with the tour. So
Yeah,
and Stacey, if you don't mind.
absolutely. So thanks, John. Thanks again for being here. It's great to see. I think there's 21 people on this Zoom virtual open house. So really thank everyone for being here. So this is an effort that stems from two previous efforts that have taken place in the last, starting in 2016. The first effort was a Mount Hood ped bike implementation plan, which was a TGM funded project adopted by the Board of County Commissioners in 2016 that looked at the wider villages in Mount Hood, from Rhododendron all the way down to Welch's, Zigzag, Brightwood, so kind of the whole corridor. And that project looked specifically at pedestrian and bicycle improvements needed in the villages of Mount Hood. So kind of looking at increasing transportation options in the villages. Subsequent to that effort, as Steve mentioned, the Rhody Rising group was formed. And that effort resulted in a Rhody Rising visioning plan document. And we'll put both of these documents on the project website for this effort. So if anybody hasn't seen those, they will be available. But that was a very successful visioning effort that resulted in a document that kind of looked at setting the future vision for rhododendron. So those were two kind of high-level planning efforts setting the stage for this, which is a more targeted look at two tax lots in Rhody on the south side of Highway 26. And we'll tour those today. Many of you are familiar with those two sites. But that's the heart of this effort, is looking specifically at those two sites. And then stemming from that, looking at opportunities for connections to the swinging bridge, to a old right-of-way remnant at one end of the swinging bridge. And as was mentioned, the transit considerations is an important part of the project. So we're kind of focused on these two tax lots, but from that, there's these other issues that will be considered as part of this project. So I don't want to get too far more into the weeds because I want to have enough time to get input from everybody. But that's kind of a brief overview and kind of what led us here today.
It sounds like this is all benefiting Hannah operation.
So the concern is the Hannah operation. So is this is in regards to the property owner? Is that Melanie?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well,
I mean, our understanding, the Rhody Rising was the beautification and safety enhancement of our community. It was not about developing the Hannah properties, but I guess that because the Hannah properties have drawn up a plan now, everything needs to be taken into consideration, considering their plan. Is that what is going on here? Because Melanie, it's totally shifted.
Melanie, that's a good question. I've got Steve Graper, he's got his hand up. I'm going to let him respond to that. Steve.
Melanie, in order for us to qualify for the TGM Quick Response Grant, we needed to have a site-specific property, and so that was the Hannah property. But it's only for the purposes of obtaining the TGM Quick Response Grant and moving forward with this whole thing. And hopefully when we're done, we will have what you and the Rhody Rising group, all of us have envisioned is a full plan for rhododendron, not just the Hannah property. But because of the TGM grant and getting these monies involved to be able to do things like this, we needed to be site specific, and that was the Mount Hood Holdings property and the Always Towing property that we will be focusing on.
I see. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. So just for the sake of time, let's jump into the site tour. And I think what we can do is we can talk about, I know there are a lot of questions that we have on our list. What I'd like to do is move into the site tour. And as those come up, that'll be a great chance to get more detail on some of the topics we want to talk about today. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay,
Sure.
let's dive. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to share my screen, and I will have a few things to display for everyone's benefit. One will be a map, and we can zoom in on the map. We're just going to be using Google Earth and Street View to zoom in on these different stops. And as I'm showing the map and some different site photos, Scott is going to be our virtual tour guide. So he's going to put on his tour guide hat and his tour guide microphone. We're all going to get on the bus, or I guess we're walking. And we're just going to walk from stop to stop. And what we're going to do is Scott's going to give a quick overview of why we chose this stop for all of us to see. And then we're going to open it up to discussion, talking about some opportunities, some challenges maybe, and then some questions that we have that are out there. And again, we're going to be recording all of your notes. If you have something you want to say, please raise your hand, but also remember to use the chat feature, and I'll make sure we look at the chats to make sure we're capturing those comments.
Yeah, we'll be monitoring both, so whatever you're most comfortable with.
Okay, so here we go. I'm going to share my screen. You'll see a picture of Highway 26. Let me jump to the map. Now, can everybody see the Google Earth image, the Google Earth map that I've got on the screen?
Yep, you're good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so you can see some little push pins, some little yellow icon push pins. These are the stops that we're going to be moving along. And just to give everybody some reference, here is rhododendron. Here's Highway 26. We zoom way out. We're flying in outer space. Here's basically Welch's, the golf course. Here's government camp. So that provides some context for where we are. So we'll zoom back into rhododendron. I think everybody on this call is familiar with the community. And so the stops that we have in mind are really kind of moving from, I guess, northwest to southeast. So starting with what we're calling the west entrance along Highway 26, and then moving along the highway, we'll stop at the right-of-way, the swinging pedestrian bridge, look at the two properties that we're going to be talking about, and then move further east, talk about the east entrance, the transit stop here, and then we'll stop at the historical marker. And then if there are other stops or points of interest along the way, please just let us know, raise your hand. But why don't we get started with the west entrance, Scott, and I'll turn it over to Scott a little bit of a background on why we chose this spot.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a misnomer. We don't really have an entrance, but we thought it was important for the context and kind of a reminder of what you experience as you travel eastbound to rhododendron on Highway 26 and kind of the lay of the land. So these lead-ins to Rhody are important as we think about this project. Highway 26, before you get to rhododendron, is a 5-lane cross-section with a fairly decent shoulder, and it's 45 miles an hour. And as you know, it drops to 40 right at this point as we're about to enter Rhody. So John, if you just want to move forward a little bit. What happens as you get to Rhody, there's observations that there's a lot of speeding up and jockeying for position as people travel through rhododendron due to the fact that the highway tapers down to 2 lanes just past rhododendron. So there's a lot of, as was noted in the introductions, speeding has been an issue through rhododendron due to the nature of the highway and how it functions. There's also an access management challenges with a lot of businesses that don't have controlled access. And so these create challenges as we look at the site and the rhododendron community as a whole. So we thought it was just important to kind of go over this kind of entry point coming from the west traveling into Rhody. And John, I think you had another picture, or if you want to move forward a little bit. The other consideration is something that I know the Rhody Rising Committee has looked at is kind of the issue of you don't really know that you're coming to a place as you enter rhododendron, and the idea of some sort of signage, some sort of gateway treatment, some sort of feature that tells you you are now in rhododendron. So now we're here, the access issues that I mentioned, you can see it just kind of an open run into the two sites, the two development sites. So that's all I had to say for the first stop.
That's great. That's a good time to take a little break. So we're coming into rhododendron. I know we've all done this. We're coming in from the west, getting to rhododendron. We've got a lot of things going on here, but I think this is a good chance to just open it up for some discussion on, some of the things that Scott mentioned in terms of, we've got high traffic speeds. We've got folks that are, speeding up to get into position to make that grade as you continue on up to Mount Hood. We've got access management issues. We've got some street frontage conditions that we're talking about. Some parking. There's a lot going on here. But I thought this would be a good time to open it up for other challenges that you all have noticed out there, but also potentially some opportunities. Scott mentioned maybe there's a place that we want to look at a gateway feature, so it's, you've entered rhododendron, you feel that you've entered a distinctive, unique community. Is that something that we might be able to look at? So let's open it up. We also have all sorts of experts on the phone to talk about various topics. So if you do have a question, now's a great time to ask it. So I'll open it up for questions and comments.
Well, this is Steve Graper. I don't know, I'm just looking at the screen with the Mount Hood Holdings property and the big rig off in the center of the screen, so I don't see everybody. But Scott, one of the areas that in the west entrance that we did not highlight in this was the rhododendron, or the Daughters of the American Revolution garden, and the rhododendron adopt a landscape piece, which is on the north side of Highway 26 as you're entering rhododendron from the west. And one of the topics that was broached when you were talking was a gateway entry sign, and that is something that the Rhododendron CPO is working on currently with ODOT, and coming up with a gateway entry sign that we can place near that garden or in that garden to identify rhododendron as a community. It's part of the ODOT and Clackamas County unincorporated community entry signs. And so we're just finishing up with a design for that, and then trying to come up with some money, and hopefully we'll be able to get a sign in that rhododendron historical marker garden.
That's great, Steve. Could you, I don't know how far off the design is, but I think it would be helpful if you could send that our way if possible, if that's something you think is going to be online soon.
Well, it's part of the Mount Hood. It was done back in 2012 between the ODOT and the Forest Service, and it was the scenic byway plan for the Mount Hood Scenic Byway Loop, which incorporated Highway 35 and I-84 and 26 as a whole loop, as a Mount Hood Scenic Byway loop. And part of the designation that ODOT has said that they will approve is one of the signs that's in that. So I will send that forward to you.
Okay.
Other comments about that west entrance, kind of observations, or just having gone through there as that entry point in. What do some other folks think about it? Michelle.
Well, one of the things that started all of this too, was obviously the safety, and there's how difficult it is to get across the highway throughout all of rhododendron, but that's a kind of a hot spot because you got the swinging bridge and it goes over to the post office and the store. So I know in our community, gathering our gathering meetings to get input from the community, everybody was interested in crosswalks or some way to get safely from side to side in a couple of places. And I think it was ODOT said that would probably be the place that they would start with a crosswalk, would be from like the bridge area in between there and the post office.
So is that kind of, Michelle, close to where we're looking right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you're looking at the left-hand side there at the store, right, the blue roof, it would be right around in that area.
Okay.
But ODOT, when asked about, ODOT also said that they would take their own measurements and gather their information and figure out where the best place was. There was talk about having one at the other side of town too, but
Well,
know that the community was really anxious to get something like that in there. I know Steve isn't really very enthusiastic about a crosswalk, but the community feedback, that was one of the top interests, wants,
Safe
desires.
Steve, did you have something you?
No, I was just going to mention that that Michelle is absolutely right, that one of the key focuses in our various different community input meetings that we had, the three community input meetings that we had, was pedestrian safety for crossing Highway 26, whatever that's going to look like. And that's a key component. And this west entrance, she is absolutely correct that at the swinging bridge across to the DAR garden, which is what we're looking at right now, is a key crossing area, because that's pretty much where the Mount Hood transit stop is in rhododendron. It's at the grocery store on the north end of the 26 and at the Mount Hood Holdings property on the south end side of 26. So that is a prime crossing area right in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got those destinations on both sides really, but definitely kind of what we're seeing now, the market. You've got some restaurants, cafes, and then you've got transit stops on either side of 26. So yeah, this is obviously a place that people are going to be crossing to get between those two destinations.
I'm curious, do people, I mean, there's, from a vehicle standpoint, you can kind of pull in or pull out at pretty much any location, through this area. How do people walk back and forth, along 26?
Yeah.
Or is it more of a?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah, people walk both sides.
Melanie, what were you saying? And then Michelle.
No, I was just going to say it's particularly difficult if somebody is walking down the road and you're trying to turn left onto Arlie Mitchell at that spot also, because people are always gauging the traffic and they don't know what you're doing. I mean, we really do need some sort of crosswalk there. People get caught in the middle and it's very, very dicey.
Michelle, what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, there's foot traffic all up and down the highway there in rhododendron on both sides, because we've got our pot shop up the road there. You can't see yet. And the post office and the Dairy Queen. So all up and down the highway throughout Rhododendron, you've got foot traffic on both sides. People are just kind of crossing wherever they can.
Leslie, you had a hand raise.
I was just also going to add to that, that with the Mount Hood Express on that south side, there is a lot of traffic, you know, crossing 26 at the DAR Garden and then all along that south side, but equally on the north side through by the tree, continuing up to the post office. So, you know, thoroughfares on both sides, pedestrian wise.
Let's keep this going. This is good conversation. Let's dive into stops 2 and 3. I think they're somewhat together, Scott. But let's talk about the kind of this right-of-way area and then the pedestrian bridge.
Yeah, so this old right-of-way that adjoins the two redevelopment site properties is, you know, back in the day, as you guys know, the Mount Hood, the road crossed the Zigzag River, and then the bridge was washed out by the floods in, I think, 64. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the early 60s. And then it was replaced by a pedestrian bridge. But this old right-of-way remnant, which we're looking at here, that feeds into the swinging bridge, is something as we thought about this project and how to think about redevelopment on this side of the highway, it seemed like there was possibly some opportunities to repurpose this parcel, which is about is less than a half acre. You guys kind of know the size, but it's been something we've included in kind of the scoping and look at the opportunities. There are challenges with incorporating this, but is it, for example, maybe appropriate for a wayside, maybe a Oregon Barlow Trail historical informational kiosk wayside? So I saw Michelle was raising her hand. Probably have some ideas on how to use this, but it is a parcel that's sitting there. And so we're interested in ideas, opportunities for this. Go ahead, Michelle.
Are you looking, when I'm looking at this picture, I'm looking directly at the bridge. Are you talking about the little stretch that goes down there to the right too?
It essentially ends right at that fire hydrant. So kind of where that guardrail, you can kind of see where the guardrail terminates.
Okay, I know that ODOT owns some of the property. If you were to follow that little road, you can kind of see it in between the guardrail and the red thing.
That's
Fire,
a
the water.
fire hydrant.
Yes, the hydrant. There's a little stretch of ODOT that goes down there, and that's been looked at before as use of parking. And I'm really against using that because there's a homeowner down there that it would be basically in their front yard. And they've already gone to war with ODOT over that once and then had their property registered historical just to keep ODOT from turning that into a parking lot. So I really don't want to go down that way.
Michelle, from a, like, what would, like, parking for the bridge or parking? Like,
Well,
what was the
I know
parking?
that Steve would like to turn this into a park area. It's been talked about having a park with a rest stop, and then they were looking at parking down there along in front of that owner's home. And I just want to stay away from that. I don't want parking down there in front of their home.
But Michelle, that was one of the very first inklings that Mark Cedar had, and after the community meetings and in speaking with the Reed property owners, that whole idea from the hydrant west is kind of a off limits for development. It's just the right-of-way property that we're looking at directly in front of the bridge after the highway. we need to be cognizant, John, as we're moving forward, of the Reed property that is directly to the west of that right of way, because the Reeds, we want to be respectful of their privacy and in doing things that would work in conjunction with what their wants, needs, and desires are as well. So, that Michelle, you were right. In one of the first inclinations that we had Mark Cedar, our urban planner and designer, had put across an idea of having kiosks and a parking area with buses, but that whole idea was poo-pooed.
Well, I brought it up because I see it's on the map still for this discussion. So I just wanted to make sure that that was brought out.
Right.
Leslie, you had your hand raised.
No, not for this question. Thank you.
Oh, okay, sorry. Just kind of checking in on the chats. Jerry, you had a question about the bend in the road. You know, if there are any specific issues potentially for crosswalks, and Seth, you would respond that sight distance could be an issue with that area. So just from a technical standpoint, it sounds like, has ODOT done any analysis for kind of what this would be, or is this something that, as a part of this project, you know, identifying that specific location based on kind of the technical merits of it is something that ODOT is going to be doing as well, or looking into?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any analysis that has been done, but I'll have to follow up with traffic to see if they've looked at it.
Okay, thanks, Seth.
One suggestion, if I may. Sorry, Avi?
Yeah.
I was wondering about the gateway that you have discussed from the west side, whether it should be on the south side of US 26, probably at the location where the extra right-of-way of the old road right-of-way.
So
if it's ODOT, I guess, as opposed to from.
Yeah, so we're talking if the current gateway potentially would be on the north side. Avi, you're saying maybe
right.
What's the potential to have it over here where the public spaces? Yeah, Michelle, you had a hand up.
Yeah, are you thinking about putting it, you mean on the south side, the welcome sign on the south side? Is that what he's asking about?
I think so.
Yes, and the reason.
Because
yeah,
when
and
you,
the reason.
well, but when you come into rhododendron, you wouldn't see it. You'd be in rhododendron on top of the sign before you even saw that you were coming into rhododendron. If the sign is on the other side, on the north side, where the garden is, then as you come around that corner, you'll see before you get into rhododendron that you're coming into rhododendron.
Yeah, Michelle's got a perfect point, Ari.
Steve, let Avi finish, and then let's get to your point. Avi, what were you going to say?
I was about to say that you have a curve, that horizontal curve that goes to the right, and driver's eyes most likely will be more to the right rather than to the left as it goes through the curve. And if they have a sign leading to...
Let him finish. Let him finish.
No, if you have a sign that leading to the sort of the gateway into rhododendron area, obviously it'll be more visible on the right side for the drivers coming from the west as opposed to on the left side. But that's my opinion.
Well, so what we'll do, and Michelle and Steve, I know you disagree with this location. We're going to note this just as a note, but part of this would be from a visual standpoint, what's the best location, you know, if we are doing signage. So Steve, I know you've been working with ODOT already for where some of these signage locations might be, and I think that would be something we could flag as a part of this process to identify the best spot.
The point of the north side of the DAR garden is any sign has to be 30 feet from the fog line, and 30 feet from the fog line on that south side of Highway 26 puts it out in the trees. And Ari, as you're making that turn from Still Creek Road coming into rhododendron, the sight line is directly forward to the DAR garden, and you would see the gateway entry sign far sooner in the DAR garden than you would if it was 30 feet off of the road from the fog line in the trees.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's keep going. These are great points. I want to be respectful for time. We're on stop 3, so let's keep going. These are great discussion items. Scott, let's talk quickly about the pedestrian bridge. You can see it here in the right-of-way image, but really a great amenity, excellent connectivity to the residential neighborhoods surrounding this area, and kind of a landmark in this area. And honestly, I thought I knew rhododendron pretty well, and it wasn't until Scott showed me this bridge, I didn't even know this was here. So I think this is worth stopping and taking a look at.
Yeah, definitely. So the county was involved with the restoration. There was repair and restoration work done in 2017 and then rededicated. County commissioners were out on site, and so it was a nice thing to get done. It really does connect the rhododendron community, because there is a large Rhody community on the other side of the Zigzag River. So this is a pedestrian bridge that crosses the Zigzag. Great views from the middle of the bridge. And like you said, John, really an important community landmark. So for this project, really want to think about what are the opportunities for connecting the redevelopment, the two sites to this, and how that might look. We'll certainly get into that more when we get into actually concept planning and some alternatives for the two sites. But anyway, we'll kind of open it up from here.
Yeah, any thoughts on the bridge, or something that, as we're kind of looking at this and talking about it, what does this kind of mean for the broader community, or potentially, does this provide any sort of inspiration for what might happen, the further away you get from this bridge, potentially closer to the highway as you are traveling through rhododendron? Is this maybe a something that we can use as an identity piece? I think there were a couple hands raised. Leslie, you had your hand raised. Okay.
No, I didn't, but I will just comment that I think
sure.
that's an excellent idea to have the bridge as somewhat of a branding image throughout rhododendron.
Thank you, Leslie. Melanie, you had your hand up too.
I did. In that last photo, you saw all of the cars and trucks that are there. And with all those cars and trucks parked right there at the bridge, and it being a focal point, it will soon be totally violated, I feel, unless there is some sort of narrowing entry or something over there to keep people from driving right up to the bridge.
Okay.
So some type of, within the concepts, so there'll be visitors, but then there'll also be other folks, if these sites develop, making sure that there's parking, but it's in the right locations so that you can still access them.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Exactly.
And Christina Babcock made a comment in chats about given the location of the PED bridge, it seems placing the Mount Hood Express bus stop there would make the most sense. And Christina, it already is very close to that spot. It's just around the corner from the PED bridge and up the road maybe 50 feet. And that's where the Mount Hood Express bus stop is.
Right, and what I am saying is move it back closer to the pedestrian bridge to better utilize that area and relieve some of the concern that Michelle noted about having cars and everything parked in that area, because you place a bus stop and a kiosk, the bus comes in there and it's out of the way. It's just an idea, because where the current stop is, I think potentially is in the way of some of the redevelopment plans.
Right.
All right. Well, let's keep going. Now we're here. What we were calling the redevelopment site, but it's essentially the hotel, the trucking towing company, and then quite a lot of gravel here fronting the highway. So, Scott, if you would take us away, let's talk about the two properties that we'll be focusing on for this effort.
Yeah, so 2 tax lots totaling about 3.7 acres in size in total. You have those highlighted now. So the former gas station on the property on the northern tax lot, southern tax lot, the former Snowline Motel. There are currently some folks living there. So somewhat used, but 2 underutilized parcels. So we're bounded on one side by Highway 26 and the Zigzag River, which you can't really see is down there. So in terms of a development, there we go, there's the river. I got a 100-foot setback from the Zigzag River for development. The zone, oh, there you go. Zoning is what we call RTC, Rural Tourist Commercial, which is pretty much a catch-all commercial suite of commercial uses are allowed. And so like we've talked about, this is kind of the heart of this project, and this effort is looking at potential redevelopment for these 2 tax lots. And I think with that, if there's another photo, yeah, this is an interesting. So given the underutilized nature of the site, it's often used for cyclists to congregate, to hit the Pioneer Bridle Trail, to go up to Govey and other locations. And a lot of people just randomly park on the site. And we can maybe, John, why don't we talk, stop number 5, which we had is the transit stop. Why don't we just combine these? Because the transit stop is right by that bus there in the photo. There we go. Mount Hood Express bus stop. So that's the current location. And so obviously would need to be considered as part of a redevelopment plan for these 2 tax lots.
All right, so we had a hand raised. Melanie, I think you had your hand raised.
Yeah, right about that setback there. It looks like part of the setback's right in the middle of the river. What's that all about? Are you going 100 feet out from the other side of the river?
Yeah, let me clarify what you're seeing. So this is based on the GIS data that we have. And so what we've added here is GIS data for the river. And so if you can imagine, basically everything in blue being what we have for data on where the water is, and this being a setback that is supposed to be 100 feet from the center of the water. So basically the center of Zigzag River, 100 feet from that center line out. So that's what this kind of semi-transparent shape is. That's supposed to be what that 100-foot setback would be from the river. So we can kind of toggle that on and off. It's just kind of a way to help show what's there, because the tree cover, it's kind of hard to see what's underneath that. But if you imagine, the presence of the river and an imaginary.
I understand what the setback's all about. It just looks like it's way too close to the river, the redevelopment site, and part of it.
Well, I think the question,
That's all.
John, is the parcel line actually goes into the blue. And so, some of that could be overlap. The GIS data may not be 100% accurate, like the specific location of the river, how that's aligned. So Scott, maybe that's something we can flag to talk about.
Thank you.
We're not surveying as a part of this project. We're not getting into that level of detail, but we could, Scott, maybe we could talk to your GIS folks to see kind of what that.
Yeah, that's not uncommon for that to happen. That, like you say, Alex, that's just kind of how when we overlay this information.
Yeah. No, but
A lot of times this because the riverbank changes. I mean, the course of the river.
Of course.
Yeah, but great point. And, that's really why we want to show everything, because some of this may not be completely accurate. We want to make sure we're getting this as accurate as possible. So good observation. But yeah, I mean, you can.
I was going to say, Mike,
Yeah,
we haven't heard from you. Do you have thoughts or comments kind of in here? This is kind of the heart of a lot of what we've been talking about with the bridge and the river and kind of development with uses. Do you have any thoughts or kind of questions, concerns about what you've been hearing?
I just had the concern about the setback.
Sure.
All right, Mike, I unmuted you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. No, I don't at this point. I'm good.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so, we know that we've got kind of, as Scott mentioned, and what looks pretty obvious from this aerial perspective is, the fact that this site is penned in by Highway 26 on the east side, and then, or the north side, and then the Zigzag River and setbacks on the south side or the west side. And so in a lot of ways, you can look at it as the glass is half empty, glass is half full. In a lot of ways, the question that we might be asking is, well, what could take place in this area, or what wouldn't be taking place in this area, and what would be taking place in the developable area. So maybe that's a place to start is, this has been this way for some time. It hasn't always been under this same ownership, but this maybe is a good time, Steve or Mike or others with some more familiarity with the history of kind of what this site has been in the past, and just kind of thinking about what we might see, in the future.
Well, thanks, John. This is Steve Graper, but that area, that 100-foot setback area, is all fairly new growth trees from the 1964 flood after the Corps of Army Engineers rip-rapped the river. Then those trees grew up, and that 100-foot setback was put in by Clackamas County to prevent anyone from developing up close to the river and having a reenactment of the 64 flood, where many buildings were too close to the river and were taken out. That whole area is owned by either Always Towing and or Mount Hood Holdings, and it would be their property. And if they're up to it, it wouldn't be bad for a river walk of some kind. But that area really is undevelopable as far as the property and the highest and best uses of that property. That's pretty hands-off area.
Yeah. It looks like floodplain area to me.
It is.
Yeah, per the county regulations, that 100-foot distance from the river is pretty much no development.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a trail can be constructed though, right? I mean, pedestrian trail.
Yeah, so the question is a pedestrian trail, is that something that might be suitable within that setback area, Scott?
That's a good question. I could certainly look. I don't know off the top of my head. There might be some exceptions. It might be a land use process to go through for, well, I know there would be a land use process to go through for anything within that 100-foot, but I could certainly check into that. I don't know off the top of my head.
Great. No, that's a good question. Other thoughts. We're talking about the two sites here. The potential that these sites hold, but also some of the existing assets that are there. I believe someone that knows the site better than I do. There's the hotel kind of in the front of the property by the highway, and then there's some cabins towards the back.
That's correct. There's 3 Steiner cabins back there that are currently being used by Mount Hood Holdings for employee housing. And then the Snowline Motel is also being used for employee housing. And those cabins, depending on what the eventual use, and that's the Steiner, what we're looking at right now is a Steiner cabin, which was the lobby of the Snowline Motel at one time. All of those have some historic significance, but Brett Fisher from Mount Hood Holdings and Lloyd Musser from the museum and several other people have been looking at those Steiner cabins as a potential of dismantling and rebuilding one or two of those cabins up at the Mount Hood Museum in Government Camp. It really, the disposition of those cabins is really going to be up in the air based on what the final determination of this particular TGM study has for the Mount Hood Holdings people.
Thanks, Steve. Melanie, you had your hand up?
No, I got to take it down. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. That was from previously. So yeah.
I would say,
Alex, go ahead.
John Young, we haven't heard from you yet. What do you think about these sites? In or the river, or kind of these locations? Is there anything that you've been thinking about that we should make sure we incorporate into this some of the initial input?
Well, my thoughts, first of all, by the pedestrian bridge is a pretty ideal spot for the transit stop, at least on the eastbound. And we've talked a lot about crosswalk across the highway, and it's my understanding per federal rules that you need at 40 miles an hour, you need 450 feet of direct line of sight for a crosswalk, which would put it up pretty much where the current transit sign is now, crossing to the basically the post office area. Is that correct? I happen to have a pretty good insight with a transportation engineer, and that's with their assessment. She's also grew up in the area, at least in her high school years, so she's quite familiar with rhododendron.
So the question, John, sounds like the question, just to reiterate, is the, kind of what's the minimum distance between transit stops? Is that what I'm hearing? Or I'm sorry, with crossings?
The crosswalk. I think it's sight line for the crosswalk. That was something that Jerry and Seth had brought up earlier as well too, I think.
Yeah, is there someone from ODOT that might be able to respond to that, or at least something we might be able to look into?
We'll have to look into, again, this is ODOT, Avi, in terms of what the site clearance would be for the crossing. Obviously, it'll have to be from both directions, but we can follow up on that and try to find out.
Great, thanks, Avi. All right, other thoughts? Other thoughts on this redevelopment site? We haven't talked much about, I'm surprised, I'm going to be the one to bring it up. We've been talking about crossings for obvious reasons. What about, improvements to the private side of what we're seeing here? So, things like landscaping, things like sidewalks, things like, distances between business access points, those types of things. Any thoughts on that, kind of things that you're concerned about, or some ideas that you think you'd like to see for this stretch of rhododendron?
I think the community, all of those things were talked about at all of our community meetings. We wanted to do some kind of sidewalks and beautification. But I have a question. When we refer to that property, and then you mentioned beautification of that property, that's all private, right?
The two sites that we're looking at are both private. That's correct.
So why are we talking about beautification of those properties if they're private?
I think what we're looking at and what this plan will be doing is talking about what the private development could look like based on community needs and community interests. So if you can imagine combining, kind of the private side, what they'd like to do with what the community would like to do, which is, this is a big part of our community. It's kind of our front door, it's right on Highway 26. These things are important to us. And so that's where we fit in, is to say, okay, here's what the private side would like to see. Here's what the community would like to see. And our job is to kind of bring those two together to see, how can we see eye to eye? So absolutely, that's a good point, Michelle. We can't dictate what has to happen in the private property, but we can talk about the things that are important to the community, what works for the people that live here and work here, and what would they like to see for this site. So I think these are all very important. One note I did want to make sure, we do have all the background documentation that you mentioned, community meetings that you've talked about. We don't mean to say this is the first time we're hearing this. So we do have all that documentation. So thanks for pointing that out, Michelle.
Yeah, so sidewalks of some kind, not necessarily just cement, but some kind of artistic, creative walkways for both sides of the highway, and keeping in the log cabin theme, the mountain theme, obviously. Those were all concerns of the community.
Melanie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, and bike, not just for pedestrians, but also for bikes.
Yeah.
And well enough marked so that it wouldn't be a danger.
Great. So bike and pedestrian safety and connectivity.
Yeah.
Really distinct ingress and egress for both sides of the way too were important to people. Because as it is, people, it's just all kind of willy-nilly. You can be walking along there and somebody can pull into the restaurant or somewhere, and they can pull in anywhere. Like,
right.
It's completely wide open. You can pull in anywhere there. So
and the big trucks do it.
Yeah, so having something that was more obvious was a concern.
Okay.
If I may add, this is for Morat again, Avi. I thought that there was a plan, Scott, from the county for this area that basically would require developers to construct consistent with a plan, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that wasn't a mandate. That was a concept that was part of that Mount Hood pet bike implementation plan that I mentioned at the beginning. So there was some general concepts regarding how access management is a problem in this area, and how if you do, add some defined points and driveways, how that would reduce conflicts.
So I think at the minimum, you want to have some sort of a concept plan so that it could be implemented during redevelopment of any of the lots, so that they'll be required to be consistent with a plan that is adopted and require cross-section of some sort or frontage improvements.
Well, and I think, Seth, that's probably, I know that you've been doing some work on some of the urban design standards, streetscape standards. That would be probably a good nexus for this project, is to think about what that pedestrian and urban environment is adjacent to the street. Because it's a bit of a free-for-all out there right now. So.
Yeah, we've been working on something called the Blueprint for Urban Design, which are updated ODOT standards for different land use contexts. And this one would be a rural community. So that's something that we can use to look at what type of streetscape we want. And that was part of the idea with this quick response project, was that if we could figure out what worked well for this particular site, then it could be replicated throughout the community.
Yeah. We're your guinea pig, it sounds like. We're trying to work through some of these.
Okay.
But I think the critical part is to have a plan adopted so you'll be able to require it once development occurs.
Yeah. Yeah, good point, Abby. So what we want to look at is, having some more definition on where these access points could be, so that provides the guidance on how that takes place when redevelopment occurs and when these improvements kick in.
Right.
Good point. Any other questions on that out there?
Yes.
Hello, John. Hello.
There's a Dutch model where they don't integrate their pedestrian and bicycle traffic with the automobile traffic, and they have separate routes for pedestrian and bicycle that has worked very well for them, and they have almost zero accidents between cars and bicycle pedestrians. So that's something to look at also.
So just completely separate routing, sounds like.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Michelle,
Before
yes.
you move on? So I don't know if this is a time to bring this up, but so let's say that somebody moves in and they want to build a new restaurant, or the Dairy Queen's going to remodel or something. Can this be, can we request that they do it in a certain fashion to match a theme of rhododendron? Like, like, is it Leavenworth in Washington that has a theme? Sandy actually has kind of adopted a theme. You'll notice that new buildings that go into Sandy have kind of a Cascadian style to them. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
they couldn't just
Oregon.
put a coffee shop in and have it look like a,
Michelle,
Subway.
this is Steve. That's one of the things that Ari was just talking about, was
right.
was coming up with a development plan that then needs to be implemented whenever anybody does any site development, and so that would be part of that whole thing.
That would be. So new buildings and stuff too
Correct.
would have to follow that, not just the crosswalks the ingress and egress and
sidewalks, that type of thing.
okay. The building would be included in that also.
Well, to some degree, we would have to be getting the Main Street program, which is a national program, involved for individual buildings, but it's not
Okay.
outside the realm of possibilities.
Okay.
Scott, you had your hand up.
Well, Steve kind of clarified that. I was just going to say, I think that's one of the outcomes that the county hopes will come out of this, is to have that standardized cross section. So when development does happen in Rhody, that it's a consistent treatment across the frontage of the development. And right now, I don't think there's that trigger that Avi's mentioned in our development standards.
Okay.
A good point.
So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, just a quick time check. How's everybody doing out there? Everybody's still hanging in there, it looks like. So we've got about 10 minutes. We've got a couple more stops on the tour. I think we want to make sure we get to those, but I want to make sure we're not skipping over anything. So if you have anything that pops up, I think we're doing a great job. So let's keep this show rolling. So let's move to our next stop here. We'll pull up the map. So we talked about the two sites. We kind of talked about the transit stop. Maybe a little bit more about that. I guess the one main thing is, I think one of the first things we discussed was the critical need for improved crossing from either side of the highway, one for the different uses, but also, if you're making that connection, taking transit, it's important to get from one side of the street to the other. Any other observations for the stop on the south side of Highway 26? Okay, we
Hey,
can.
John, let's move down to the next couple, just since you have a few. I think we covered a lot of this stop. Can we move to the next two, since we're starting to get short on time?
So let's go to the opposite end, what we're calling the east entrance. And as Scott mentioned, not necessarily an entrance, more of just the east end of rhododendron as you're coming down from Mount Hood on Highway 26, or as you're leaving rhododendron heading towards the mountain. So Scott, you want to talk a little bit about this stop?
Yeah, so kind of similar to the west side, there's not really an identifier for Rhody coming down from the mountain. And as I'm sure everybody has driven down from the mountain, and it's a 2-lane cross section, and then right before Rhody, it opens up. So I know I'm always tempted to, when it opens up, maybe speed up a little bit. It seems to be the natural inclination, to be honest with you, when it goes from 2 lanes to a 5-lane cross section. So kind of the same issues on this end as the other end, speeding. And in this case, it's just the open nature of the highway kind of allows that faster speed coming down from the mountain. Oftentimes you're kind of getting out of the snow zone here coming into Rhody. Yeah, so kind of the same issues. Just, John, if you can maybe we can go to the 2-lane section and just look at where it opens up to 5. If you can spin around. I know we're kind of short on time here, but
It's too far, Scott? Can you see that?
Yeah, so yeah, go forward a little bit. Yeah, that's probably, is there a new flasher there? Is that?
That show you the speed, basically.
Yeah.
What are you driving?
You're just going too fast. You can't see it.
So
the Google Earth car was going 35. So there you go.
Yeah, so that's kind of it. I mean, some of the same issues that we've already talked about. I don't know if anybody else has any other thing to say about kind of these 2 entry points into Rhody.
We were talking about gateway signage from the west side. Was there also discussion about coming in as you're coming off down the mountain, entering in rhododendron from this side?
Yes. Yeah, the coffee roasters are right a little further down, and so there are oftentimes people walking down the road here also from the Forest Service cabins to get to the Mount Hood coffee roasters.
Okay.
John, this is Steve. There has been discussion about a gateway entry sign on the east end of rhododendron, but we wanted to focus our attention to the low-hanging fruit, which would be the DAR garden, and putting a gateway entry sign at the west end. obtaining land for that 30-foot setback from the fog line would mean that a gateway entry sign would have to be on private property, and acquiring that private property is problematic at this point. So we wanted to focus on a west end gate reentry sign. That 40-mile-an-hour speed indicator on the east end is kind of a nice gateway entry sign, because it is trying to tell people to slow down. I wish we had one of those flashers on the west end as well, but at least coming into Rhody, where it splits from the 2 lanes into the 4 lanes, 4+ lanes, having that 40-mile-an-hour flasher is equivalent to a gateway entry sign. If we could just put some kind of a sign on that saying entering rhododendron would be great.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Okay, just a few more minutes. We wanted to make sure we got to this last point here. Definitely, you know, a unique feature of rhododendron is the Barlow Trail historical marker. So I'll zoom in here. And Scott, you want to do just a quick overview of what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so segment, you know, when the Oregon Trail veered off, you know, the Oregon Trail literally, you know, ran right through. I think our historical maps show it running right down the center of Highway 26, the Barlow segment of the Oregon Trail. So as Steve mentioned, the community garden here is a nice feature of the community, and there is a little plaque commemorating, I think we have a picture of that showing the plaque. So it's a nice feature. Rhody CPO maintains the garden here. And so, you know, the pioneer spirit and the Oregon Trail, you know, how that might be part of this project and part of our thinking as we look at this. So I don't know if you have those pictures, John, that we had uploaded.
I have them here, and they're not pulling up. But while I'm pulling those up, yeah, it's a pretty interesting spot here, especially given the significance of the fact that the Barlow Trail came right through rhododendron. So some ideas on some opportunities. Obviously, this is on the opposite side of the pedestrian bridge, opposite side of the properties that we've been talking about. But potentially, ideas for integrating the theme, Michelle, you talked about having some sort of a theme. The fact that there's the covered wagons coming from Mount Hood, the Barlow Trail, that's part of the history here. But some other ideas. How does this site relate to what we're looking at here for these two properties in rhododendron in general?
What do you mean by how does it relate?
Well, I'm just curious. I for one, I didn't know this was here. Like the pedestrian bridge, it's off the highway. There's a really nice marker, but I'm just curious. How would you know this was here? Is there a chance to maybe incorporate highlighting that it's over there? It's an amenity. It's part of the community. Are there any improvements that we should be looking at to link those two?
Well,
Go ahead, Michelle.
There's a handful of people that have worked for many years very hard on that area and maintaining a really nice little garden. And it's all ODOT property, but that's not a very good picture of it right there. It hasn't been mowed or anything. But that section there, next time you drive into Rhody, take a look at that over the summer and the spring when we start working on that again. It's a really nice little garden.
Yeah.
And then if the welcome sign were in too, I don't know what else you could do with it. It's ODOT property.
Yeah, that was the point that I was going to make, John, is the fact that that is all within the ODOT right-of-way. It's a very wide right-of-way at that point, goes over and incorporates Arley Mitchell Road. And so that is all ODOT right of way, and it is by the grace of Marlene Nichols and the Division One maintenance people, and Marlene giving us the ODOT adopt a landscape permit to be able to even be working in that area. But it's a area of pride that I know Mike Miskowitz and Michelle Lamoureux and Melanie Farnsworth and myself and a number of people from the CPO take great pride in maintaining that garden and keeping rhododendrons blooming in that garden, because obviously rhododendrons are the namesake for the community. So we want to maintain that garden as best possible and highlight
Absolutely.
it.
Great. Just to be cognizant of people's time, we are at 5 o'clock, which is how long we wanted to keep you. So I thank you for your time. Unless there are any other comments we want to talk about while we're on the phone, I think we're out of time.
Melanie, you had your hand up. Did you have a comment that you wanted to add before we close things down?
There you go. I'm done.
All right. Just want to make sure.
Okay, got that. As I mentioned before, that we have this meeting is recorded, so we'll make sure you get to see that if you want to take another look or send this off to someone else you think might be interested. Casey and Alex and I have also been taking notes, so we'll have a summary of what we talked about today. We'll get this out to that out to this group, so make sure we've got everything down as you heard it as well. So we'll make sure we get that out. As far as next steps, we did talk about, Scott, I think, mentioned in the email that he sent out about another opportunity, another meeting later this spring that we're still figuring out as far as timing, what that would look like. But as I mentioned, we're just getting started. We're in the midst of this pandemic, and so we're being flexible. We want to accommodate folks, especially as we integrate the larger rhododendron community. We will have opportunities to talk with the community, hopefully in person. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Hopefully in person by this summer, we can make that happen. So stay tuned for that. But we'll be providing a lot more information. Clackamas County has a great website with a homepage just for this project. And so we can send you that link as well. But that's got all the information, everything that we're going to be providing. So you can see all that we're doing in one location. You don't have to go searching around for it. Does that make sense? Any other questions?
Sounds great.
What you can be expecting? All right.
Well,
just want to say thank you.
Oh, great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Did this work
Been
out
great.
for folks?
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate everybody's flexibility on this. So.
Can we go back to gallery view?
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, let's hear. I'll stop the share. We'll go back to gallery view. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
I just
All
want
right.
before everybody leaves, I just want to say thank you to everybody for their concern and for their input. I think this has been great. This is what we started out to do back in 2016, and we're just moving forward now with a little bit more direction and some guidance from both MIG and Clackamas County and from DLCD. So and ODOT. So this is going to be a hand-in-hand opportunity where we all help each other. And hopefully it doesn't become an adversarial relationship, and we can all think outside the box and come up with what's going to be best for rhododendron.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, then.
Have a great rest of the day.
Stay
Thank you
healthy,
very much
everybody.
for
Yeah, stay
participating.
healthy. Wash your hands. See you.